So what have you seen change specifically for the faculty within your tenure at New College?
Yeah, so I mean, it was different when we were part of the University of South Florida. We got access to some of the resources of a larger university, which was great, but we also had to deal with the infrastructure of a larger university, which meant that sometimes things took a long time. And there was definitely a little bit of tension because the administration at USF was pretty far away. When we became independent, we weren't really given the budget we needed, so we couldn't even run our own payroll for the first year. We had to contract that out to USF. So that the effects of always sort of operating on a shoestring have definitely lingered. There was a brief period when I was actually administration. I was division chair of humanities from 2016 to 2022, and there was a very brief period where suddenly we were in a growth mode. We were going to grow the student body. We hired new faculty. We were able to think more creatively about not just replacing somebody with somebody who was as close to them as we could get, but thinking about new areas. And we added some really interesting programs. I've been working a lot with a group of colleagues across the natural sciences and the social sciences, building a health culture and societies, like a minor plus, so it gets combined with something. And we're seeing that that's leading students into all of the sort of health adjacent fields, so not just med school, nursing school, the conventional paths, which they're also entering, but going into occupational therapy, going into behavioral health, going into health arts. So those are the kinds of things that have been really fun and exciting here. And right now, it's just a very uncertain time. We're not really sure what the status of any of these programs is. We're not sure who's going to be here next year, either in students or in faculty. So I've seen, I've seen a lot of, there've been a lot of challenges over the year. This is a smart group of people and a dedicated group of people, faculty, staff, and students, and people really pull together. And I've seen us pull through and sort of turn lemons into lemonade. But this feels like a particularly difficult moment because there's just so much uncertainty.
Exactly. And so as far as the censure, the document got released yesterday. It outlined a lot of things that the faculty thought were wrong with the Board of Trustees.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just outline how that came about and what the goal of the censure is?
Yeah, so if you follow higher ed, one of the common moves that happens when faculty have lost faith in administration, and that would go Board of Trustees, President or Chancellor, Provost, deans, et cetera. A vote of no confidence is more common. A vote of no confidence, though, simply says, we don't have confidence in our leadership. And it derives from British parliamentary practice. It doesn't, the faculty do not have the authority to hire and fire presidents. So a vote of no confidence simply says, we're not following you. You're not leading us. A vote of censure is more of, this gets back to my theory that this is a place that believes in improvement, right? A vote of censure is targeted. It says, here are the things we think need improvement. And if you want to take it up positively, we're inviting you to improve on these points. Here, it's much more specific. It's much more pointed. So it makes a clearer explanation of why people are responding the way that they are, that this is not just fear of change. This is not just recalcitrant faculty who just want to do things the way they've always done. This place has always been about change and improvement. And that's the spirit in which I think we approached it.
All right. And it's interesting that you pointed out how this was different from a vote of no confidence. So why specifically did you choose to do a censure over a vote of no confidence?
There were some very specific concerns that people had been bringing to the fore and that we had seen. There's been, there's a lot of stuff happening on social media. We often learn about things that the Board of Trustees intends to do from their social media accounts. That's not really the way it's supposed to work. It was also really enlightening when a member of the Board of Governors came and gave a sort of preview of what the Board of Trustees training looks like. Now, because I've been in administration, I've attended a lot of Board of Trustees meetings in the past. I've spoken at them. I've presented research and work I'm doing with students. There were particular things that we wanted to flag and say, we think these are not the kinds of actions that trustees who have a fiduciary responsibility of trust and to support the institution, to protect its reputation. If there's change coming, there's change coming, but you usually try to do that in a way that is building rather than tearing down. And there were particular things that my colleagues and I saw that we thought were going against the spirit of the role of a trustee.
And one of those things in the document that was outlined was the faculty tenure being denied. What are your thoughts on that?
Right. So there's, one thing I am thinking is that we need to do a much better job of explaining what tenure is to people who are not in the field. Now, I will say that tenure is very analogous to what happens in K through 12. So my mother was in the K through 12 system as a librarian for many years in another state. And for her first 3 years, she was probationary, which meant that every summer she got fired. She had 3 dependent children. So this was hugely anxiety producing for us. After that period, she was then tenured, which did not mean she could not be let go, especially for cause, but it meant that she had more job security. She didn't get fired every summer. She had a continuing contract, barring problems. What I'll say is that we have a progressive discipline system here. That means if there is a problem, if someone is not fulfilling their duties as a tenured faculty member, we give them a chance to improve. Once again, we make a plan. Here are the specific things that you're not doing. Here specifically is what you need to show improvement in. And then we track it. And it takes time, but improvement takes time. And it's generally, if you run a company, it's generally more efficient if you can find a way to get your employees to improve rather than just kicking them out. What happens for academics is, I moved down here from New York City. People move all over the country. We pretty much have to go to where the job is, which means you uproot your family, you move your whole household. And so people want to know that if they do that, they have some kind of job security, because it's very difficult to pick up and move again. There are not that many positions in higher ed, particularly for more senior faculty. That just doesn't happen unless you're somebody who's at a research university and you're a star researcher, and we're a teaching institution. So what I will say is that when I was division chair, I was able to hire excellent faculty, national faculty, international faculty, people who were really committed to the teaching, but who were all also modeling what really good scholarship looks like for our students, because I could offer them, when I could offer them a tenure track position. When I could only offer a 1-year position, we brought some very good people in to build their resumes, but it was really difficult and we couldn't keep them. I saw a lot of people leave when we couldn't offer them tenure. So it goes to the quality of the and the commitment to the institution. When people are tenured, they're very engaged in the community. They're very engaged in events. They have deep roots, and they really want to build those bridges so we don't end up with a town gown divide, which is really damaging. You won't see that if people are contract laborers.
And another point in the censure was that the dean of Hillsdale College had communicated with Richard Corcoran outside of public meetings to pave the way for him to become the president. Could you just dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, I know much less about that. But what I will say is that Florida sunshine laws are very serious. When I've been on search committees, we cannot discuss the search with anybody on the committee outside of a publicly noticed meeting. I mean, it goes all the way down to hiring a staff member. So the idea that you would be having back channel conversations outside of the sunshine on anything that is likely to come before the board is, to my understanding, problematic, if not in direct violation of the sunshine law.
All right. And according to the Tampa Bay Times, there wasn't 100% faculty support on this censure. So what were some of the dissenting opinions, and what was said by faculty? And how did you reach a conclusion that everybody could agree to? Or at least as many people as possible.
Yeah. I mean, part of it was that people needed to understand what censure was about. No confidence, censure, writing a nice note and saying, please, would you all do better? So part of it was understanding the parliamentary procedure, understanding what our options were. One of the concerns, and I know our union president has said this, so I'm just going to repeat it, is that people are concerned that there might be some kind of retaliation. Now, that is illegal, but we're in a very murky place, and people are fearful. We've already seen social media posts by appointed trustees suggesting that we should all simply be fired and replaced. So people are operating from a place of anxiety and fear. And that's really detrimental to doing the work that we need to do to support students, to support our colleagues, to support professional staff, to support the people who keep the place running. This place really takes everybody being all in. And if people are distracted by anxiety and fear, it's much harder to do the really good work that we need to do.
And the school responded saying that the censure comes from, quote, a resistance to change. So what is your response to their response about change?
I would just say this is a place that has changed every single year I've been here. We are change masters. You know, it's a standard thing that you know, colleges and universities have cultures, right? They define themselves in certain ways. They, you know, anybody who's ever taken a child to do college visits knows you're looking for that good fit. It's a little bit like house hunting, right? Do you want the house with character? You want the house that's got a all ground floor plan? Do you want a house with a pool? Do you want the house that you can afford? People make choices about institutions. And so, you know, I guess what I would say is that change tends to come somewhat slowly, but we've actually seen a lot of it in the last 2 years. We've had an influx of fresh new faculty. Courses are changing, programs are changing, new programs are starting all the time. So I don't think resistance to change is really our problem. I think resistance to a lack of vision about where we're going. We've seen some things at a very, very high level make New College look like Hillsdale. That doesn't tell us what it looks like on the ground. What does the day-to-day operation look like? Are you telling us we shouldn't be, you know, that certain classes can't be taught? If you're telling us that certain books can't be read, you know, we don't know what it looks like. And that's, to my mind, that's kind of, that speaks to a problem with leadership, right? Leadership should be providing the vision and then role modeling what that going forward looks like. And the trustees have an important role there, and an important role in liaisoning with the president to make sure that that's the kind of leadership we're getting. And I think the censure suggests that it's not that we're fearful of change, it's that we are at sea without a vision and without real leadership.
So what are the next steps that you hope for New College in summary?
I think we would all like to know what it is we're trying to offer to incoming students. We do not have the current mission statement is the one we've had for the last several years. I mean, it gets revised every few years. This one was put in place under President O'Shea. The marketing plan on the college is all still the same. We just don't know what it is that we're trying to invite people to join us to achieve here. There is some talk, I think there'll be some work this summer on creating yet again another core curriculum. You know, there's ongoing debate about what that will look like. I'm happy to say that some faculty are involved in it because, you know, if you want to make changes to the curriculum, you really want the experts on curriculum and the people who are actually going to be delivering it to be part of the conversation. Up till now, we have felt somewhat more, you know, sidelined. And I think that's been really hard. My hope is I would really love to see the Board of Trustees take on their role, take on the trust of that role. I will say that I am a trustee for an organization in my professional organization. I take that very seriously. That means I donate. That means I show up to meetings. That means, you know, I help use my contacts to make good things happen for the organization. I would love to see our trustees take that up and really help build our reputation and really support the institution, which is essentially made up of people.
Right. And lastly, Miriam, is there anything you want to say that could add to this and or that you would want to tell people who are following the story and have been following the New College Florida process and journey between all of this?
Right. I mean, I think the one thing I will say is that I think what's happening at New College and some of the ways that it's being represented, you know, I'm not a fan of culture wars. I came through the 1980s canon wars. I think a lot of that is noise. But what's happening, you know, what's happening here, and particularly some of the processes and the avoidance of traditional processes, I think should make people very concerned about what's happening in higher ed. I would point to K through 12. I mentioned my mother was a librarian. I would point to public libraries. I believe that public institutions are incredibly important. They are access points for people who might not have access otherwise. And to model a public institution on a private institution is an enormous error. It's not that we can't do work that's as good, but that we are the open door for people who might not have thought higher ed was in their future. And that for me is a core mission.